Hello, and welcome to Adventures in Regression Therapy. I'm Steve Burgess, hypnotherapist and regression specialist, and together with members of my team, we'll be introducing you to the fascinating world of past life regression. In each episode, we'll be discussing the importance of regression therapy, the range of physical, emotional, and spiritual issues it can help with, and sharing some of our clients' stories from the many thousands of regression sessions we've facilitated over the years. We hope you enjoy the ride with us as we explore the power of past life regression. Hello, and welcome to the Adventures of a Regression Therapist with me, Steve Burgess, and my colleague, Monique Glover. The purpose of these impromptu, informal chats is to share with you some information about regression as a concept, and particularly past life regression, because that's something that Monique and myself and my team members all specialize in. And what we're wanting to do is to share some regression stories and to give you a sort of a bigger picture of the world of regression, what it is, how it works, etc., etc. So we're going to be just doing some relatively informal chats and putting them out on Hypno4All, and hopefully you'll find them interesting. That's the concept. So, Monique, what would you like to ask me as a fledgling client, somebody who's relatively new to hypnotherapy and regression? Fire away.
Okay. So imagine I'm a new client. I know nothing about hypnotherapy, about hypnosis. Hello, Kat. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. The cat would like to know, Steve, what is hypnotherapy? What is hypnosis? What is regression therapy? How does this all work together? What do all these things mean to me?
Well, hypnotherapy, hypnosis is this inner state of being. We call it a trance. That's our jargon word, is to go into trance. And the state of trance is, in a hypnotherapy setting, generally a relaxed state. So in most cases, somebody, when they're in a hypnotic trance, they're in a relaxed state. And what that state of relaxation does, it allows the subconscious part of the mind, the deep inner part of the mind, to, you could say, it starts to come through from the back part to the front part of the mind. And the conscious thinking mind takes a little bit of a back seat. And what this does, it allows us then to work with the powerhouse of the mind, the engine room of the mind, the 99.999% of the mind that we don't usually use on a day-to-day basis. And use that powerhouse of the mind in order to help heal people with various issues. So the therapy in hypnotherapy is what we do when somebody is in a hypnotic state in order to create a healing of some sort for them. So that's the concept of hypnotherapy. I usually explain the idea of the conscious mind and the subconscious mind by talking about the mental iceberg. And basically, if you think of an iceberg, the tip of the iceberg above the waves is the conscious thinking mind. And that's the part of the mind that anybody who's listening to this now will be analysing with and thinking, is that right? Does it, etc., etc. They're using the conscious mind in order to understand what we're saying. But beneath the surface of the waves is the subconscious, the 99.9% of the mind that we don't overtly use on a day-to-day basis. And our subconscious it's awesome. It's a powerhouse. It's the seat of our emotions. It's the seat of our intuition. It's the seat of our creativity. It's the seat of our imagination. It contains all the memories that go way, way back. And so this is why hypnotherapy as a therapeutic process is so damned powerful, because when somebody is using the powerhouse of the mind, then they're more likely to get a very good result. And so basic or standard hypnotherapy is really about using what we call post-hypnotic suggestion therapy. And what we're doing in that is we're taking a client into trance. We guide our clients into trance, into a relaxed state. And then usually we're feeding the subconscious with positive suggestions. And the idea then is that the subconscious takes those suggestions on board, uses the suggestions in a positive way to help somebody to change. So we do a lot of that with weight loss hypnosis and with stop smoking hypnosis, etc. And the aim of that, the subconscious is influenced by repetition. So the more someone hears something, the more it goes into the subconscious. Now that works negative as well as positive. So if in childhood we are continually being told that we are shy, or we're no good at maths, or in some cases we're stupid, with repetition, the child starts to believe that and they become shy, or they become no good at maths. So that's a negative way of programming the subconscious. The positive way, and those people who have been on Hypno for All and heard any of my recordings, my hypnotherapy recordings, will know that they're just relaxing while I'm guiding them through lots of different positive suggestions and visualizations. So that's standard hypnotherapy. But regression, and this is the exciting part of hypnotherapy, as you and I know, Monique, is where we are using the subconscious to heal issues from the past by going back into the causes of those issues. And we find that the regression model, all of our issues come from locked in feelings and emotions from past traumas. And it's a question of going back into those traumas to release them. So regression simply means to go back into the past. And in a hypnotherapy regression perspective, it means to go back into the past in trance, in this inner state, to go back to the emotional traumas that have caused the issues that we're living with, or that are holding us back and stopping us from living our lives freely.
So tell me, what sort of things is it useful for? Why should I see you or a member of the team? What can this help me with in my life?
The incredible thing is that every issue that we have as human beings in the regression model is caused by locked in feelings and emotions from past traumas. So depression, lack of confidence, anxieties, phobias, relationship issues, sexual issues, physical problems. We work a lot with physical issues because every physical problem, whatever it is, has emotional causes. Of course, you and I are very much into Louise Hay and You Can Heal Your Life, and the concept that every physical problem has emotional causes. So in order to cure the physical problem, you go into the physical causes and release into the emotional causes and release them so that the physical gets better. So any issue, skin problems, I'm missing a few. Tell me some more as well that I'm missing. I mean, there's lots. Any issue can come from the past.
Skin and IBS. I find
IBS,
been a lot recently. Yeah. It's almost like these waves of things will come all at once, and
yes,
that
and there's been quite a lot of research into hypnotherapy and IBS, and it's used extensively with IBS. Can be incredibly successful. And my IBS recordings on Hypno for All, I think, get more hits, more views than any other recordings, and it shows just how widespread that particular problem is for people.
Do you find that's a hard connection to make, that the emotions are causing a physical, that it's not such a big leap to think, okay, my emotions are causing mental distress, but for my emotions to be causing me to have IBS or the skin rash? Do you find that's a hard jump for people to make?
It's more easy nowadays than it was. I've been doing it 31 years, and you can imagine 31 years ago, people thought I was doing voodoo or rattling bones or something, because it's amazing how we've come on in the last 30 odd years. And I think also that the medical model is losing its grip, really. It's trying to hold on as much as it can. The medical model that every physical problem is something chemical or organic, and you put a tablet in there or you cut it out in some way. More and more people are understanding the emotional causes of issues. And of course, as people like ourselves work with clients, get results, and they heal from their physical issues, the more they spread the word that, and it's a long-lasting cure as well. It isn't just something that works for a short time. So I think the word is getting out, but it's slow. But we're working to promote the this new paradigm of healing, which
Mm.
isn't about putting chemicals inside people. It's about working on the emotional level. I mean, just last year I had an elderly gentleman in the UK who was in his 70s, and he had really bad back pain, very bad back pain. He'd had it for many years, and he was really struggling. I mean, getting in and out of up and down out of a chair was so painful for him, and the pain was there all the time. And his subconscious, once he went into trance, indicated that there was a past life causing this back pain. And he went back into a past life where he was a man and he was in battle. And somebody came up behind him with a big sword, so it was a medieval time, and stabbed him in the back. And when the sword went in, he sort of moved in the chair because, he felt this. He didn't feel the pain, but he felt the energy of what had happened. And he let out a big sort of yell because it was quite a shock. And then he died in the past life. And that was the cause of the back pain. So, what as we do, as you know, Monique, we go back several times then in that past life to clear the full energy. So I took him back a few times, but I think after 3 or 4 times when the sword went in, there was no feeling, no response, and the back pain was completely cured. So that's basically how it works.
Mm. Okay, so you mentioned going back, that we are regressing, we're going back. What are we going back to? You briefly mentioned past lives. Is there anything else that we're going back to where these emotions are?
Yeah. So in the regression model, the regression world, we're working in 3 areas: this lifetime, past lives, our ancestors' lives. So for some of my clients, some of our clients, we're working in just in this lifetime. And of course, most people have got emotional baggage from this present life. It's said, John Bradshaw, the father of inner child therapy, and we both know how wonderful inner child therapy is, the healing of our inner child from childhood wounds in this life. He states that only 4% of people are truly functional. And that means that 96% of us are screwed up in some way.
That's a pretty small percentage.
Well, I've been around a long
Yeah.
time on Earth, and I've only ever met one person, I think, who I would say is truly functional. And he
Makes
was
you
a
not feel
Tibetan.
so alone that people are dealing with a lot of their own stuff too, right? Yeah.
We've all got stuff. We all have emotional baggage, and so there is a lot to be done in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Some clients have past life traumas, and we can inherit traumas from our ancestors in our bloodline, from our parents, our grandparents, our great grandparents, our great great grandparents. They can go back several generations. Usually, the shamanic way of thinking is that they go back up to 7 generations. Occasionally, I have found familial genealogical traumas going back further than that, but usually it isn't further past 7 generations. So for some clients, we're working in all 3 areas. Um, but just to regress just means to go back in the past to your thoughts. I mean, I had a client who came with a dog phobia many years ago, and she was terrified of dogs. I mean, she really was terrified of dogs. She could hardly leave her house. She was almost housebound, almost a prisoner in her house because she was so terrified of being out in the streets and there being any dogs. If she went into a city to go shopping, she had 3 or 4 people with her to stand around her just in case she saw a dog. And guess what? Whenever there was any dog in the city centre, they came to see her because she was sending out such a
Ew.
strong energy. She brought them back to her. And I asked her, so how long have you had this problem for? And she said, it's all my life. I've had it all of my life. She said, even since I was a child, but it's got worse as I've got older. And she was about to go on holiday to visit her daughter in the States for a few weeks. And she said, well, we went to my daughter's last year and they had to put their dog in the kennels. And she said, that's not really fair on the dog. It's not fair on my daughter's family. I guided her into trance, and her subconscious indicated that there was a childhood memory causing this phobia. And I took her back, and she went back, and suddenly, as she's laid in the chair in trance, she suddenly went, "Oh, I'm remembering. I'm about 2 years old. I'm about two, and mommy wants to take me to the park to see the ducks." Oh, she said, oh, and it was all nice. And she said, Mommy's put me in the buggy in the pushchair, and she strapped me in. She straps me in, and she's taking me to the park. And she had a big smile on her face. And then I said, okay, so what happens next? She said, I'm at the park. And she said, Mommy's put me in front of the duck pond to see the ducks. And she puts the brakes on the buggy, and she's gone off to talk to a friend of hers. And my client was very calm and very happy for a minute or so. And then all of a sudden, she started to go very tense and become extremely tense, and her whole body was rigid. And she started to go like this. I said, what's happening? She said, there's a dog. There's a dog. There's a dog. And he's sniffing me. He's sniffing me. And then in her imagination, she did what she did as a child. She batted the dog away from her. And the next thing, she was crying and screaming, oh, no, it's bitten me, it's bitten me, oh, no, it's bitten me, oh, etc., etc. So basically, when she was 2, she'd hit the dog because it was sniffing her, and it just bit her on the face. And of course, she couldn't get out of the pushchair. She was strapped in, she was trapped. And of course, Mommy came over and petted her and got rid of the dog, etc. But that was the cause of the phobia. Mm-hmm. And we released that emotion. It wasn't fun for her, but this isn't fun therapy, but it's effective therapy. We went back through it a couple of times after that. We completely removed the energy from that memory. So at the end of the session, she was able to relive the memory, but there was no fear. The fear had completely gone. We call that neutralizing the fear. And she came out of trance, and she was obviously shocked, but she said, I remember that now. I've forgotten about that memory all of my life. I think the lady was about 60 at that time. So she'd lost the memory for 50 years. And we call that a repressed memory, which usually are poisonous memories. We don't get many repressed memories, but when we do, they usually have a depth of emotional charge. And so she was fine after the session. She was a bit shocked, obviously, but she felt very good. And I asked her to think about dogs, and there was nothing, no zzz inside her. She was just, yeah, it was okay. Anyway, she left my office, and then it was about 6 weeks later, there was a knock on my office door, and this lady was there one morning, and she said, I've come to tell you I went on holiday to my daughter's. Not a problem. And she had some photographs she brought with her. And in one of the photographs, she's sitting with the dog with its head on her lap. And in the other photograph, and it's a big dog, she was sitting with her arm around this bloody big dog in the back of the car. So obviously she was over the moon because it had been fixed, it had been sorted. And I've still got those photographs somewhere in my filing cabinets from like 20 odd years ago. So that's an example of regression into this life. But the regression process is the same whether we go into a past lifetime or whether we go into an ancestor's life. And when we're in an ancestor's life, we're usually reliving an event as though we are that ancestor. And it's fascinating. It's just fascinating. Not for us, we're so lucky as therapists, aren't we? Because we experience these things day after day with our clients. But it's fascinating for the clients as well. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It's fascinating on both ends. Makes good stories after when they get back to their friends and family, especially when you're comparing notes. I find when clients go back into ancestors, and these are recent ancestors, and they go back and they ask their parents. And I had a client, she went back into her mom's life, And she went and talked to her mom, and this was something she experienced in her teenage years as her mom. And her mom just looked at her in awe and said, "How did you know that? How
Yeah.
did you know that's exactly what happened? That's exactly what happened to me. She had no way of knowing it." It,
Yes, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that happens so often. It's quite extraordinary, isn't it?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And clients can't believe it. They say, so this is real.
Mm.
They've maybe gone from they've maybe finished a session, and well, I used to say on my office, but you work with clients in your office, I know, but and we both do online work. But at the end of a session, many clients are a little bit mystified. Was that, did I make that up? And then they go away, and as you say, parents, grandparents corroborate and say, yeah, absolutely, that happened. And they always say that, how on earth did you know that? And it proves the reality of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I have a question about going into the trauma, because I know we get asked this all the time, and it's something that can be almost a bit controversial sometimes about going into the trauma. So tell me, we're going into the trauma. Is that dangerous at all? I think we get asked in those terms. Is it dangerous to go and re-experience this trauma, to even re-experience the energy of the pain?
Yeah, good point. The first thing is, it isn't fun therapy. So
Mhm.
it takes a lot of courage to do this work. And I admire all of my clients because it does take courage, because they're moving into the unknown, of course. But as long as the work is done properly, then it isn't dangerous. In fact, it isn't dangerous anyway. But if it's done properly, it doesn't make a person feel worse. So by properly, what I mean is, and the regression system that we use, and as my team, is the system that I've created over the years, where the subconscious guides us through to where we need to go. It tells us how many past lives, where we need to go, to actually cure these issues and clear the issues. And the subconscious, first of all, is happy to do this, because we always check, is it okay for us to work in this way? And as long as the subconscious says, yes, it's okay, then that's basically the all wise part of the client saying, yes, this is okay. And then the reliving of the trauma. Now, there's so many different experiences. For some clients, all they do is they see something and they get a little bit tense, and that's the therapy process, and it heals the issue. Other clients become quite emotional. For some clients, the body shakes or moves, especially if they're releasing fear or anxiety. And occasionally, and it is occasionally, we get the clients who really do go into the trauma in a big way, and they're screaming and yelling and writhing. But they're the clients who get better very quickly, because they're releasing the energy of the trauma very quickly. And as long as the client is allowed to do that, then it releases the trauma, it releases the energy. When regression doesn't work, it doesn't work often if the therapist is not properly trained and is scared of clients who go into emotional stuff. I've heard of therapists who, if a client becomes emotional, then they bring the client out of the emotion. So you shouldn't do that. No, no, no. Well, hang on. You brought somebody out of an emotional trauma, and then it's there. You haven't worked on it to release it. So it means that the stuff is up, we would say. And it means it's then with the client for several weeks, perhaps afterwards. But the main feature of this is, it works if you go back through the trauma and re-release it until there's no energy in it. And it's very simple. And it isn't fun, but it gets rid of the energy. And as you know, the metaphor I always use is that the therapy process, regression process, is about releasing the energy out of the emotional pressure cooker.
Mhm.
And what's happening is that all the pressure in our emotional pressure cooker is bubbling away all the time, and we're reacting to it all the time. The regression process takes the lid off the pressure cooker, lets some pressure out. At the end of the session, we put the lid on, and there's less pressure. And this space is healing and freedom and well-being. And the more therapy we do, the more we drop the pressure, until that pressure cooker is really full of freedom and healing. So it is safe to do this as long as the therapist knows what they're doing. Unfortunately, not all therapists get trained properly in regression. I know that some therapists still do a one-day training course in regression. that's not safe. Got to do at least a day and a half. But you've got to do more regret. You've got to do the regression properly. Then it's safe. But it is safe to go back into the traumas. And Virginia Satir, the wonderful family constellation therapist, Virginia always used to say, nobody dies from crying. And the regression concept, the cause of all of our issues, locked in feelings and emotions, if we can release the emotions, then the problem, the issue gets better. Although there are other ways in which regression works, and we'll probably talk about those in other discussions, but that's the regression model.
I wonder if it speaks to a greater picture of us as humans, or maybe even as a society, that there is that fear to go into those emotions as well too, especially the negative, that it's okay to go into the positive, but we often try to avoid the negative, numb it out, take something to cover it up. And we do our best to not go into that, which, like you said, it only builds up that pressure more. Or we're not allowed to cry, as children, especially as little boys, that you're taught very early on that it's not safe to show these emotions that maybe the adults around you think are not good. Even anger, right? As a child throwing a tantrum, that a lot of those things are shut down very early on.
Mm. We always take the line of least resistance as human beings.
Yeah.
It's just something in us.
Yeah.
It's easier to look away from the unpleasant stuff and just to focus on the positive. And of course, there are whole therapy processes and therapy schools which are all about focusing into the positive. And there's nothing wrong with focusing into the positive. The problem is if you've got this bloody great big backpack on your back, which is full of crap weighing you down, then you've got to carry that and be positive at the same time, which makes it harder. So it means that the positive either doesn't work or it's less effective. Empty the backpack, then you're lighter, and then the positive stuff works much more easily and much more readily. So, but you're quite right. It's partly a societal thing, I think, and especially for men. And as we both know, probably 75% of our clients are female. Because women are much more open in therapy, and men tend to be controllers as well and stiff upper lip and nothing wrong with me type of thing. But my belief is that men die younger than women because they lock their emotions in. That's my belief. Women release emotions more easily and therefore they live longer. It's just a belief and it's a thought, but it's based on 31 years of therapeutic experience.
It's not something you just came up with this morning while brushing your teeth, right? No, I like that. Okay, along this thread of being this new client, another common question is, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this not fun therapy, but I know it has its benefits. How long? How long is it going to take? How long of a commitment is this? I've tried everything. I've tried all of the therapies under the sun. How long am I expected to be committed to this before I start seeing results?
Regression doesn't work for everybody. Nothing works for everybody. So some people just don't seem to regress very easily. And if regression isn't working, the beautiful thing is if it isn't going to work, it doesn't work quickly. So what that means is you don't have to have 15 dozen sessions over the next 5 years and get nowhere. And then the therapist says, I'm sorry, I can't help you. No, if it isn't working, we know very quickly within a few sessions it isn't working. Then we say, okay, either we as therapists bring some other therapy tools into the process and do something else. Or if we do that and it's still not working, we say, okay, we've done our best. This isn't right for you. Maybe try a different therapy. But regression does work for most people. But the number of sessions can vary from one session to many sessions. It all depends on a variety of factors, how good the person is in hypnosis, the depth of the problem, the depth of the causes of the problem. There may be several past lives which all need to be worked through. There may be several significant events in this life, etc. So we never know. And any therapist who says this will take so many sessions is, I'm sorry to say, really fooling you. because they don't know either. And but generally it's a few sessions. It's not like going to your analyst in the States where you have years of therapy and every week or every 2 weeks, and builds a nice swimming pool for the psychologist or psychiatrist in their back garden, but it doesn't get you better. It's nothing like that. It's nothing like that at all. Some people get better very, very quickly as well with this, which is remarkable. And one of my greatest successes, we all get what we call one-hit wonders as therapists. In one session, somebody will get better. Yeah. And we become known as miracle workers, which we're not. We're just using a very powerful therapeutic process. But this happened to me years and years ago. A client came. She was forced to see me. She was an alcoholic, a functional alcoholic. Every day she was at work. She got home at 6 o'clock in the evening, started drinking. By 9 o'clock, she's pissed, absolutely stoned. And she looked like death. She was way overweight. Her skin was in a bad way. Her asthma was bad. She just didn't have a life. And a friend of hers said, "You've got to go and see this Burgess bloke. I'm sure he'll help you." Excuse me. And she didn't believe her friend. The friend was saying, "Go and see this Burgess bloke. He'll help you." And she's, "Oh, he's not going to help me. Hypnosis, how's that going to help me?" And she came to see me to prove to her friend that I couldn't help her. So she sat in front of me in my office in those days, and she was very resistant. But I guided her into trance. And in the first session, the subconscious said there was some past life stuff to work on. And she just cried. She just spent the whole session crying in trance. We didn't see anything. We couldn't see what the past life was. Mm-hmm. And she came out of, and she was a tough person. She held on to her emotions. So she was quite shocked that she'd cried at the end of the session. What was that about? I don't know. We didn't see the content of the past life, but it was obviously very emotional. And she went away from my office mystified. But she has never, ever touched a drop of alcohol ever since then. And that must be 25 years ago. I call her Wonder Woman. I think she's amazing.
That's from just one session.
Just one session. Yeah. And she'd been a functional alcoholic for 16 years. But I wish it happened like that all the time, and we'd all be millionaires, But we never know when it's going to happen. Okay, we did do more regression, and there were other regressions. She was in the First World War. She died in the trenches. She was a Christian in Roman times, and they put her to death in an amphitheater, being torn to pieces by lions. But that all helped to enhance and reinforce the healing. But that one session really did the trick. But that's unusual.
That was the big one.
So going back to your question, there's how long is a piece of string? We just never know.
Yeah.
But if we don't get people better, we don't get them better quickly, so they don't have to waste time and money.
Mm-hmm. It's important.
But I would suggest, Monique, over the time I've been doing this, and the regression system that we use, I would suggest that we have around about an 80% success rate overall. I really would, with the stuff we work in, provided people see the therapy through.
Which is pretty darn high, considering that I think a lot of people come and see us as not the first, and we're not the first practitioner. Usually we're the last result, or the last resort, that we've tried all of the things. We've tried the conventional route. We've tried a lot of unconventional things, and you are my last shot at this, or I've had this for 40 years and nothing that I've tried is doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Madam Client, I do hope that my words today have convinced you of the efficacy of regression therapy, and I do hope you can come and see me as a client sometime.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for explaining that. I think it's great for people who have never heard of any of this before, or think it's all, crazy voodoo, to have it laid out like this, and to get a little bit more information. It's hard to jump into this new crazy therapy. So I think you've helped to ease a lot of thoughts and nerves and common questions that I think we get asked all the time.
Good. I hope so. And as we continue these discussions, people understand more and more. And and I'm hoping that we'll share fascinating stories of our regression client sessions. And they are fascinating.
Yeah, we'll get into the juicy parts next, right? Hang on to your seats, folks. Good.
Okay, well, thanks for watching, and thanks, Monique, for being a lovely interview. And we'll be back.
Thanks for listening to Adventures in Regression Therapy. For more information about Steve Burgess and his team, check out steveburgesshypnosis.com or connect on Facebook or Instagram. Steve's books The Power of Past Life Regression and Famous Past Lives are available through his website and Amazon, and are available as audiobooks through Audible. Free hypnotherapy recordings are available on YouTube on Hypno for All. That's Hypno, the number 4, all.